Ready to go? Let's go. Yes, of course. Are we ready? Okay. Right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Planning Committee, Thursday, the 22nd of June. This is a public meeting. Members of the public and press are permitted to report on the proceedings. Reporting includes filming, photographing, making an audio recording and providing commentary on proceedings. Please note this meeting is recorded and streamed live. These recordings are published on the relevant meeting page of the Council's website. By choosing to attend this public meeting, you are deemed to have given your consent to being filmed or recorded and for any footage to be broadcast or published. If the alarm sounds, the premises must be evacuated immediately. Do not spend time collecting personal belongings. All emergency escape rooms are clearly signed. Once you have left the building, the assembly point is on the High Street, opposite the Guildhall. Members and other speakers are reminded, please, to use their microphones when speaking so we can all hear you. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the first meeting after the election. We have 4 new councillors. We have Councillor Cross, Councillor Round, Councillor Smith and Councillor Udall. Thank you. And I'd like to say a warm welcome back to Vice Chair Councillor Agar, who will duly assist me. Thank you very much. Do we have any apologies or substitutes, please?
There are no substitutes, Chair, but we have apologies from Councillors Amos and Cleary, and Councillor Shabazz Ditter is coming to the meeting. He's just a little late at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then we're going to move to declarations of interest. Councillor Udall.
This may surprise you, Chair, but I have made a predetermination on application number 10. I intend to speak on the application but not participate in any of the discussion.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'm going to start by saying that councillors on this committee also sit on other committees that have had reports for an item coming on committee, item 11, which is 56 Foregate Street, which is part of the Arches project. I sit on PED, and the scheme there has had no detail. We haven't needed to give approval for the detail of the scheme, so I will be approaching the scheme with an open mind, and if there are any other councillors in that position, would they like to let me know? Thank you. So we've got Pat Agar.
I was on P&R at the time it went through Policy and Resources, and again it was a policy decision, and we didn't discuss the detail of any applications.
Thank you. Councillor Sarah. Councillor Olcott.
Chair, thank you. Yeah, I was and I still am on P&R.
Thank you. And Councillor Round.
Thank you, Chair. I'm on PED.
Thank you very much. Okay, so then we're going to move to the minutes of the previous planning committee. If we go through this page by page, this was a meeting on the 20th of April, so I know that there are a few people who were here at that time. If I go through page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. Okay, so we can say that they are a true record of the meeting and are duly approved and signed. And then we've got item 4 is the minutes of the previous Conservation Advisory Panel, and I will go through these page by page as well, shall I? Or, yeah? Okay, so if I go through page 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, you'll note that some of these comments that were at the Conservation Advisory Panel are on the items on this agenda, which is great to see. Thank you. We didn't have any site visits today. I just want to remind members and that the requests for site visits have to be through from the Monday by 5 p.m. Okay, if you think that you'd like us to have one. And then we're going to move to public participation. Do we have anybody?
Yes, Chair, we have Chris Mitchell here in attendance. Thank you.
Can I welcome you to the seat, please, Chris? Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So, Chris, you have 5 minutes, and Georgia will be timing you. Thank you.
We hit time, George, but I might be supposed to congratulate you on your role as chair of the committee. With slightly biased opinion, but it might be one of the most important committees in the council. I wish you luck.
Thank you.
The opportunity to address you today. The points I wish to raise and the questions I wish to present are, I believe, relevant to not only this planning committee, but the council in its wider self. Before I get to my questions in detail, I would like to put some context around them first. The South Worcestershire Development Plan, which was signed off by this council in 2016, identified in the Affordable Housing Supplementary Planning document at paragraph 2.6 that the South Worcestershire has an unmet need for 8,410 affordable homes across the city, across the county, of which 4,509 were attributed to Worcester City. The document also identifies that 6,407 residents are on the waiting list and 5,107 were assessed at being in a significant level of need. In order to address this need, Worcester City Council has a target of building approximately 350 affordable homes a year. To my knowledge, the council has consistently failed to meet this target, some years not even building 100 affordable homes. The updated SWDP will place an even higher target on the council, likely to be over 400. My first question: how many affordable homes has the council delivered since October 20? And if possible, could I get the breakdown by year and numbers in that year? And how is the planning department working with external agencies and other parts of the council in order to assure that the city has a plan to deliver the required level of affordable housing across the city? I have 3 other points to raise. Delays in planning decisions. As chair of this committee, I had to bring to the managing director my concerns about delays in making planning decisions and the fact that the council's planning department at one stage were one quarter's reports away from being designated. I have concerns that while improvements in performance have been made, they appear to be tailing off. It was only recently reported that the council face a 1.7 million in-year deficit budget, with a medium-term 5-year forecast looking nearer to 8 million. And that is having to look at redundancies and service cuts to fill this gap. The planning department will surely have to share its burden of pains and cuts. According to the government guidelines, major planning applications should be resolved within 13 weeks. Government performance targets insist that 60% of major planning applications should be reached within this period. Clearly, based on the information which is freely available on the council's planning portal, this target is at risk. My question is, has the committee reached the target of resolving 60% of major planning applications in the last 8 quarters, and which applications have failed to be resolved in this period and why? I'm pretty sure that the response to my question will be less than transparent, as there is a loophole which allows planning decision times to be extended beyond the 13 weeks, if both applicant and department agree on an extension. When decisions are consistently delayed, the council received no additional funding for the extra work required. Developers who use this system to resubmit ever-changing plans without being forced to resubmit an application simply eat up officers' time and add costs to the council, which is surely not value for money for the taxpayer. How many of the major applications in process have been extended beyond the 13-week period, and what percentage of these extensions are over a year in length? I'll now turn to the issue of viability. Due to the delays in making planning decisions, often developers are requested to resubmit viability assessments. Everyone in this room will be aware that the building profession has experienced considerable challenges in both supply chains in terms of costs and delivery. So anyone with even a modicum of mathematical or economic understanding would reason that long delays in decision making will impact upon viability assessments. What this means is that the council are less likely to demand the 40% targets we've set for affordable homes. Again, there are ongoing planning applications across the city which have been delayed for years and have been asked to make significant reductions in scale or scope in order to retrieve a recommendation. But officers would surely understand that this will mean viability will not be met. My question is, how do officers believe that a viability assessment, which when originally submitted and proved challenging, based upon an application potentially 2 or 3 years old, will now deliver the affordable housing requirement we need. And finally, on the 2nd of June, I submitted to the Corporate Director for Planning a formal request for answers to a number of concerns I have raised. To date, I have not had a response, but haven't even had a courtesy of an email acknowledging the receipt of my question. I would ask the Chair to commit to me obtaining a written response by the end of the week to my questions on the Lowesmore Wharf development. Thank you. Was I under the 5 minutes? 4:52.
You had 10 seconds left.
Oh, well, there we are. Practice makes perfect. Thank you very much.
Just in response, Mr. Mitchell, if I can just confirm to you, the Chair has asked me to confirm that a written response will be sent to you following the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. For the application for the Crown and Anchor, we have two public representations. I don't know if you'd like to come forward, take your places, and then when it's your time to speak, after the presentation, we'll be ready. If we have, welcome Carol, if you would go first when you speak, and then is it Mr. Holim Young? You go second. Okay, thank you. Okay, so this presentation is with Dale. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Item 8 on this afternoon's committee agenda relates to the Crown and Anchor Public House, with the application seeking planning permission for the proposed residential redevelopment of 7 residential apartments, with 2 of these flats being existing and reconfigured. This first image shows the site context of the application site. The building, former public house, is 2 stories in scale, with a conservatory and toilet block to the side which have been demolished. The application site faces east onto Hilton Road, and the Little Holywell Public Hill footpath, which is a right-of-way, runs to the northern boundary, with residential properties situated to the southeast and to the west. And the site topography rises sharply to the west. The next 3 slides before committee illustrate aerial imagery and photographs showing the existing condition of the buildings on the site. The committee may note the poor environmental condition of the plot and the disrepair of the former public house building in the image before you. The next 2 slides before committee are comparative slides to illustrate the 2018 planning approval for 6 units, set against the scale of the current proposal on the image below. The second of these 2 slides indicate the much larger scale of the previous application, which was in 2021, which was refused. And you'll note the larger scale of the 2021 development on the 2 images above, set against the scale of the current proposal before committee on the 2 images at the lower part of the screen. Clearly, the reduced scale being, in this case, part 1, part 2 story, is a vast improvement on the 2021 permission, which was refused in part in relation to scale. The scale of the development is supported by officers as set out within pages 17 to 22 of the committee agenda. The existing floor plans are indicated on the next slide before members, before the committee. The public house is being retained and reconfigured as part of the proposed conversion works, which would involve 7 flats in total, with 2 of these being retained and reconfigured. The next image before committee illustrates the proposed ground floor plan. with 4 of the 7 flats proposed at this level. The ground floor provides private and communal amenity space, landscaping, cycle parking to serve the proposed development, along with refuse storage provision. A new opening is also proposed, providing secondary access to the northern part of the site with the Holywell public footpath. The next image before committee is of the first floor and roof. This illustrates the new build flats element at the rear, together with the 2 former flats within the converted public house at first floor level within the site's frontage. Unit 7 would have a small area of private amenity space in the form of a first floor balcony, whilst the 2 converted flats within the public house, which currently...
Sorry to interrupt you there. Oh, Councillor Udall, I think unfortunately Councillor Cross can't see now. Sorry. Could... Sorry.
Unit 7 would have a small area of private amenity space in the form of a first floor balcony, whilst the 2 converted flats within the former public house would have access to the communal amenity space. Also, the committee may note an array of solar panels is also proposed at roof level to help the development sustainability and energy needs. The next slide before committee in this image illustrates the proposed elevations including from the street seen with Hilton Road, and also from the public footpath. The proposed design is of a simple form and appearance in terms of the new build element at the rear, with a palette of materials to be in keeping with the locality. The final slide concludes the officer presentation. The officer recommendation is set out within the agenda package is that planning permission should be granted, subject to the use of planning conditions. Thank you for listening, committee.
Thank you, Dale. If I open the floor to any, oh no, we're not doing that yet. We're doing the public participation, are we? The public representation first. Okay. So if we start with Carol Hallett, is that all right? Hello, welcome to the meeting. You're a local resident, I believe. You're a local resident.
I am.
Okay. So you have 5 minutes, and Georgia will time you and indicate when you're getting close, if that's okay.
Thank you very much. Chair, committee members, thank you for accepting my application and request to address the committee. And this is in addition to extensive comments I've already submitted. My family have lived on the Henwick Road above the Crown and Anchor for nearly 50 years. The university has changed the identity of the city totally. And while rapid and not without ongoing problems, the change is undoubtedly for the better. I am a former art teacher, and my grandfather built houses in the Hertfordshire village of Abbots Langley post First World War. Flint brothers are part of local history, and I'm very proud to belong to that family. There are essentially 2 choices facing the committee today: accept the proposal as it stands, or possibly with the modification reducing the site build to 6 apartments, or to refuse the application. My preference and request is that the committee refuse the application. The C&A Crown and Anchor site has been part of a long-running saga now for over 20 years, becoming extremely neglected, a centre of arson, drug dealing, alcoholics, intimidation, and so on, and has caused many local problems. There is public weariness and disillusionment, but essentially the majority of the community want to obtain the best long-term solution and not create unforeseen problems in the future. Major public issues relates to the car-free nature of the development and the impact that will have on illegal and obstructive parking throughout the area. The community have eloquently and forcefully described the problems they have endured for many years and outlined multiple objections arising from this application. They are reasonable objections, and I have every belief that they are being analysed and assessed. We have absolutely no way of enforcing the car-free expectation, and it will undoubtedly increase parking in an area already under intense pressure, as recognised by the Article 4 Houses of Multiple Occupation SPD declaration, with the expectation that this will be reissued for another 8 years. If we grant this planning application, it will continue and compound the problems we already have and does not represent joined-up thinking. The current proposal offers cycling provision as a way forward. Now, with the best will in the world, cycling is not for everybody, for reasons of age, physicality, and convenience. My view also is that this is essentially a form of virtue signalling. Cycling is useful and promotes health, but it is not a transport solution. Together with the growth of e-scooters and illegal, reckless and uncontrolled cycling on pavements, deaths, accidents, and controversial sentencing for some unfortunate person, we would be doing nothing but adding to more unforeseen problems of our own making in the future. Joined up thinking? Moving on. The Secretary of State for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, Michael Gove, on the 5th of December 22, on the Gov.uk website says, if we are to deliver the new homes this country needs, new developments must have the support of local communities. These principles have always been key to our reforms, and we are now going further by strengthening our commitment and put local people at the heart of decision-making. I suggest this pledge to local people is fundamental to this application. What would be a solution to this parking problem? Very simple. The Crown and Anchor should return to being a family-owned property prior to becoming a drinks house, with a licence for providing the local abattoirs and tanneries with beer and no spirits, and with provision for immediate drive-in access underneath the first and second floor of the original house. Further living accommodation could be built along the floor plan of the bowling alley. South-facing, it could incorporate triple glazing and present no parking problems whatsoever. Children would walk to the local school and along the riverbank, and an already ravaged local community would be strengthened. My own preference would be for a total new build on the floor print of the old building, capable of delivering the very highest green eco
wind up now,
spec.
please? I'm afraid your time's nearly up. If you could just finish up now, please.
Quick building solution to a difficult site, but that's a decision for another day. Today's decision is up to you. We have suffered the blight of local road builders over 20 years. The community is tired. Is that all right? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Ho-Ling Young, I believe you're the... Oh, we would do questions first?
Yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. If it's okay now, we'd like if you could stay where you are, and we're going to offer the floor to the members to ask you any questions about what you've said. Okay, does anyone have anything to ask Carol, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Ms Hallett, I think we all have a good deal of sympathy with many of the things you said, but and I note that you have suggested a completely different sort of development would be appropriate, but unfortunately, I don't know if you understand. I'm hoping that you understand that we have to decide the application before us. We can't at this point suggest a completely different sort of development.
I understand that. So
I thought you would, yes.
yes, I understand that. So one of your options is to refuse the application as it stands now, and I'm suggesting that that is what you do, and cooperate. And I was going to go on to say that actually cooperation with the developer, I think, is of crucial importance. this has been a torrid time for the community St John's. We've had a terrible time. We cannot proceed with road developers, and cooperation with developers and supporting each other is absolutely the way forward. So I suggested that you either refuse this application or you partially accept it with a modification to reduce it to 6, which has come up already in some of the objections. So you do have that option. My vision for the future is something, as I said, is another day, is for another day. So I do understand that.
Okay,
Is that clear? Thank you.
okay, thank you. Richard, do you have a question?
Thank you. I know this site reasonably well. I'm not sure every member around this council chamber does. Maybe it could be useful if you could explain the highway pressures which exist around the site and why you think parking would be a significant issue in the locality.
Is the one ward in the city which has got the highest HMO problem in the entire city. It is huge. We've had uncontrolled growth. Parking problems have been continuous. We've had and still do have illegal and uncontrolled parking on dropped curbs and in front of houses. I would say that the Hilton Road and the Henwick Road, where I live, are both major arterial roads and who are both developing. The Hilton Road is now a major arterial road with 2,500 houses or whatever being built off the Martley Road. And the Henwick Road is a very high residential building, but it's very busy. So having cars there forces people who live to come out into a busy road with no visibility along the road whatsoever. And I would remind you that someone was killed at the Co-op 6 months ago because of pressure of parking. So the whole area, because of HMOs and other reasons, and don't forget as well that the Hilton Road, the university has got a huge impact on that area. I don't object to that, but you always have opportunistic parking. It's never ending. I have a form which I feel
Carol.
like Victoria Meldrew. I put it on the thing. Yes, I'm finished.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I just very quickly add on, can you explain where the nearest on-street parking availability is for any visitors or residents to this premise, to these premises?
Clement. Oh, a couple of 300 yards. And I suppose you could go up Albury Road into Coma Road and Lawn Road, and you could go further up into Coma Gardens. So
There's no immediate on-street parking provision?
no, not at all.
Thank you for coming and speaking. One question. You suggested a reduction from 7 to 6 apartments, and we are constrained by material planning decisions, so material factors in terms of planning. What difference in material planning terms would the reduction from 7 to 6 bring, in your opinion?
Of the 2 apartments to the north of the site. Currently, one of the apartment on the ground floor to the south of the site abuts the boundary wall. So the entire boundary, both boundary walls are completely covered with infrastructure, with building. So it makes I think it's number 5, I can't remember. I think it's number 5 and number 6 will only have, both of them, will only have a small window to the north and a small window to the east. Any south-facing light will not be evident. The one up above is in a better situation because it's on the ground, it's on the first floor, and that will have south-facing light. So it's the 2 new build apartments that are that have a problem. And you know,
Carol, if it's okay, what I'd like to ask is the officer to talk about the lighting to these units, because I think it's something that has been raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee. In connection with daylight to flats, the standard of accommodation is an important and is a material planning consideration. So I'll just summarise the position of where we are with regards to each of the units. Units 3, 4 and 7 at first floor level are all dual aspect flats, so they would benefit from adequate daylight receipt. Units 5 and 6 at ground level, which were those that were cited, are also dual aspect windows, with windows oriented with the east and west elevations. Units 1 and 2, also cited, which are immediately adjacent to the neighbouring property, those are single aspect. However, in that case, the units would face southeast, which would maintain and obtain maximum daylight receipts into those residential buildings, and therefore, on balance, officers consider that there would be no substandard level of accommodation provided in this case.
Thank you, Dale. I think that's very useful. No more questions for Carol? Okay, thank you. Can we move on to the agent for the applicant, Ho Lim Young? You have 5 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Good afternoon, councillors and chairman. Thank you for your time today.
Sorry, could you speak up, please?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Go right to the speaker.
Yep. Can I move it? Yes. Hello. I'm here today to emphasise the key benefits this application would bring and overall consideration of the positive impacts on the local area. This proposal would be an effective use of land by contributing 7 apartments to the housing needs for the Worcester area and utilising a brownfield site for residential use. This would indirectly relieve some pressure of providing houses in more contentious and protected areas elsewhere. The design seeks to reuse the original building and construct new apartments in the underutilised land at the back. The scheme has been carefully designed in such a way as to prevent the risk of overlooking into a neighbour's garden and protect their privacy, as well as providing natural surveillance to the isolated corridor on the Little Holywell Hill. The 7 apartments comfortably fit onto this site, with each apartment having a mixture of private and communal amenity space. Each accommodation would meet the national space standards for residential accommodation, which is to ensure the significant spaces has been integrated as part of the overall design quality. The reuse of the original building would retain the quality of the street and remove the derelict appearance of the vacant site. The new building at the back is designed to be low profile and subordinate in order to maintain the importance of the Crown Anchor to this area. There are many sustainable qualities attached to this site, with the close proximity to the city centre and St. John's Shopping Centre with parking and amenities nearby, as well as local transport availability nearby. With the public infrastructure easily available, the site is an ideal location to promoting walking, cycling, living without depending on cars. This also allows for people who have not got the access or the ability to drive a car to live in this area. And in my personal experience living in St. John's area, nearby without a car, because of excellent footpaths and crossing, it was enjoyable walking past the cathedral every day to go to work in the city. In addition to this, the proposal would be very much in line with the recent council initiative of the Active Travel Plan, which see the council investing £4.5 million pounds of funding in promoting to be less reliant on cars and encourage an active lifestyle, as well as creating new walking and cycling paths around the city. This is part of council's environmental sustainability strategies, which aims for Worcester to be carbon neutral by 2030. Lastly, allow me to speculate that most of us here today would like to see the Crown Anchor being redeveloped, and this application would be a step towards achieving this, as we strongly believe the application is an appropriate development for this location and has an overall positive impact to the local area. Thank you for your consideration, and I would like to address any question you have.
Thank you very much. Do any members have any questions, please? Andrew.
Thank you for your presentation and coming to talk to us. One question. When people are moving in, I mean, I accept that living without a vehicle is easy. At time of moving in, that's when the challenge of potential parking obstructions can arise. How would you advise or give us reassurance that this development would not lead to occasional significant obstruction along that road whilst people are moving in or out? Thank you.
I think one of the conditions is for the developer to propose a travel pack for the residents who's going to live there. So it highlights areas where you can travel and park in order for them to get to and from the site. Obviously, there are local parks, little car parks that you can pay for overnight and so on. That you can, obviously, it's a bit more distant away, but it is doable. And I will say, in terms of the travel pack, it will be one of the conditions that the developer will be looking into complying.
Sorry, I don't know if I didn't quite follow, but my question is at the point of moving in,
right?
And when you have, when tenants or occupants have lots of belongings to bring in, the immediate assumption from a lay or outsider's perspective would be that vehicles would pause and offload, but thereby create precisely the sort of traffic problem that this is how I was talking about.
On limited parking spaces, I think it's 2 hours. It is so there's obviously restricted hours for people to park there, and those parking spaces are permitted as well. But I guess generally, I would try to argue that when they're moving in, generally are not on the busy time of the day in terms of early morning of the day or late in the morning, late afternoon.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Of course, if I can provide a little bit of help, if I can. In terms of the travel welcome pack, that's condition 6 of the recommended conditions, and what that deals with how people get in and about in their daily lives. In terms of actually moving in to that, I would suggest that that's not really a planning consideration. It's the same as part of the overall construction. Whilst we can look at the construction and environmental management plan, the short period of time of people moving in is so minimal that I would suggest that that's not something that we would be able to take into account as a material consideration. However, that is something that you might want to consider, but across the country and across this city, there will be occasions where there is minimal parking that a delivery lorry will turn up, do what they need to do in terms of unloading, and they will do that within that short period of time. So hopefully that's helped.
Thank you. I've got Richard, then Elena.
Thank you. The issue of parking for construction workers and or construction vehicles, I know has just been referred to slightly, but can you confirm what availability there would be for that on site? And are you aware, and could you give any comment about the impact any local traffic incidents could have on the process of construction when, i.e. flooding causes diversions or problems to Henrik Road, level crossing causes problems?
So in terms of, I think there will be a condition on construction management plan setting out what the management will be like. To be honest, we haven't stepped on that far in the process, but I can imagine, because there's currently a existing parking space on site, one of them. I'm presuming that you can get in and out of the site relatively with small vehicles. So this will lead to a design process where you choose the materials for for the quickness of construction, for example, timber frame construction. That would ensure that will allow the construction period to be shorter. But obviously, disruption will still happen, but we try to minimize as much as possible in order to get these houses built. And once it's built, that would be the process, really. Does that make sense?
And I'm assuming that there wouldn't be any issues of concern on your part if there are any conditions which would be limiting the hours of construction to consider the issue of highway safety measures at peak time, bearing in mind its main arterial routes into and out of the city.
No, I agree on that. I think it's generally a requirement on plan application that construction time are restricted to a certain period of the day, deliveries as well, and also not working on Sunday, I think it is. So we happily go and accept that.
Yeah, so I think that's condition 7, isn't it? The construction environmental management plan, which will be agreed with the planning team, all the detail. Okay, lovely. If we could go to Alina and then Jill, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just got a query. You've said that there are going to be solar panels in your application. Is that correct? How many? Because I've just seen the words an array of solar panels. So how many have you identified?
It depends how much you can fit on the site, and I think it is one of the technical issues that we will draw out at the end of it. I mean, the flat roof itself will have quite plenty of space for I think at least 3 or 4 for it to go on there, but it will be determined when the decision is going to make on the technical side. That's okay. Yeah.
I believe that is a condition 12, which is for the energy generation from renewable or low carbon sources equivalent to at least 10% of the energy requirements for the building that you will need to conform to.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Obviously, we'd like you to exceed that. By the way, we'd like you to exceed 10%.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, 10% is really the absolute minimum. Okay, lovely. Okay, so if we move on to Jill, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was interested, you said that the apartments are meeting space requirements, is that right? Can you be specific about how much space is to each apartment? Because I don't think I've seen it anywhere in the papers.
40 square meters for each department.
A single occupancy, does it?
Yes, single occupancy. I mean, that is what we're proposing here. Yes.
Okay. I have a deep concern raised on other applications that single occupancy sizing does not stop 2 people moving in, 2 people and a baby. Just want to register it.
Yeah, I think it's based on 1 person, isn't it? Space standards, but we can't stop 2 people moving in. That's correct.
That's correct, Chair and Councillor. The nationally described space standards are the minimum standards. In this case, the flats at 39 to 40 square metres to meet that, although there's limitations to the control in terms of falling outside of that plan system doesn't have the teeth in which to stop anyone, prohibit anyone outside of that material number. Nevertheless, we have a condition that the scheme should be built in accordance with the approved drawings, and that should capture the development as we see it. But the actual layout of the development, which we do have control over in planning terms, is policy compliant before the committee today.
Thank you. That's very clear. Great. So we have no more questions for the speakers. Okay, you can move back to your seats, please. Thank you. Thank you for your contributions. And then we'll open the floor to any more officer questions? Or, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just one point, committee members, that I've just noticed as going through the conditions. If I can just take you to page 35, there is a condition that looks a little bit odd because it hasn't got a number and it's set outside the normal indents. And it starts prior to the above groundworks being commenced, and it's condition that the Chair has mentioned in terms of the 10% of predicted energy requirements. That's condition 12. As you go down, there is another condition which has sort of merged itself with that condition, which starts prior to the occupation of the development hereby permitted, the obscure glazing, Pilkington level 3 minimum, to the southern elevation of units 3, 4 and 7 at the first floor level, as detailed on drawing, should be installed and thereafter maintained. That is an additional condition which hasn't got a number. So as part of the recommendation, if I can suggest that that becomes condition 15, and that will be for obscure glazing. So in terms of the recommendation, I didn't want members to start to debate it without having that consideration that there is an obscure glazing condition which had merged itself with another condition. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. That's great. I was looking at that myself, a bit confused. Okay, do we have any questions, please, now? Jill.
Thank you, Chair. So this, now you've highlighted the obscured glazing, we did have the toing and froing with the obscure glazing that came to committee a few months ago, and then actually it wasn't glazing that went in, it was some sort of film that was applied to the window. Or is it, have you got the capability to ensure this is glazing, or are you content that in the event that a bit of film is put up, that's still okay?
Through you, Chair, in respect of this condition, it actually says obscure glazing. In the condition that you referenced that the committee considered previously, it was obscure glazing or equivalent because of the retrospective nature of the application. In this respect, we would expect that the condition would bite on the basis that obscure glazing needed to be provided.
Okay, Alina, and then Pat.
Thank you, Chair. Can the officer give me some more insight into the position with solar panels and how that clause happens in practice? Because I'm a bit confused by that special condition. What I'm most concerned about is that something's very generalised and that we don't get solar panels and it's very watered down in reality. So I just wondered if we could have some reassurance about that.
Happy to do so, and through you, Chair. In respect of the drawings, they showed the PV arrays on the drawings. The condition 2 will require the development to be built in accordance with those drawings. So there will be a requirement to provide PV panels, irrespective. What the condition does is require that over and above that, that a statement is provided to demonstrate that at least 10% of all the energy requirements for the development are met by those renewables and other renewables that may be required to make sure that the 10% is met. So in terms of the drawings, I can give you guarantee that they are on the drawings and they will be provided as PV panels.
Sorry, I'm being pedantic. I have a bee in my bonnet about solar panels, and having come across developers in the past who have put these things on planning applications and they are part of the drawings and then they never materialise. And then the planning department is stretched in terms of enforcement. So is there any way that this could be a particular condition to say perhaps maybe before occupation, or am I just being too difficult?
Through you, Chair, that's a consideration for the committee. If they feel that that is something that they wish to see on the development, I don't see any, in terms of the tests of conditions, it would be reasonable, it would be policy compliant. It would be necessary for your considerations to make it acceptable. So in terms of the 6 tests that you would be looking at, I would say that it would meet those tests. So if the committee wished to add in a condition 16 to require that solar panels were provided in accordance with the approved drawings and details to be submitted, that would be something that you could consider as part of your any recommendation, any proposal or motion that is put forward today.
Okay. And then I've got Pat, please.
Thank you, Chair. 2 things really. One concerns drainage and the second one concerns highways. Turning to the first one, 6.7 on page 13, there's a paragraph there where I note there are no objections by the Land Drainage Partnership, which confuses me a bit because the paragraph prior to that in 6.7 says that there is no public surface water sewer on the Severn Trent map, and only a combined sewer in the highway. I'm just a bit concerned about how they're intending drainage to work. And the second question about highways is, Ms. Hallett mentioned a severe accident resulting in a fatality in the area. I'm not clear where that was, and I note that the police have made no comment at all here, and I don't see any concern on the part of highways. So is that a relevant issue with regard to this particular application?
Okay, so can you, if we start with the drainage question, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. In connection with sustainable urban drainage, I note your point regarding the South West Worcestershire Drainage Partnership. As part of the belt and braces approach to the determination of the application, you'll note within the agenda package on pages 34 and 35, there is a condition which is number 11, which states that no development shall take place until details of the implementation, maintenance and management of a drainage scheme has been submitted to and improved in writing by the local planning authority. So we do have it within our gift to ensure that the details are sufficient.
And then Karen, I don't know whether you could comment on the highways question, please.
I'll say what I can. I'm not aware of the details of the fatal accident that the speaker mentioned, but I do recall you saying that it was outside the Co-op shop, which is located on Henwick Road. So obviously that is close to the site. What we would do is we would have always looked at the accident record in the vicinity, and one accident in isolation wouldn't necessarily cause us a concern to say that the location was unsafe and that additional development of this nature wouldn't be acceptable because of that one accident. It does sound awful, but it looks like it is a one isolated incident, so that wouldn't have changed our opinion.
Is that okay, Pat? Thank you. Richard.
Yeah, I'm very interested in, as you can probably guess and imagine and predetermine, my concerns are on the highways issues as well, and I'm a bit confused at the lack of a highways objection here, because the road is incredibly sensitive. The road network in that area is very sensitive. It is main artery route in and out of the city centre, and any obstruction there will cause lengthy delays. So I would have thought providing provision of 7 apartments without any parking provision would create an unacceptable impact on highway safety. And I was interested to know why highways think that is not the case, because there's clearly going to be an impact upon the highway, and its importance is so acute to the local transport links in the area, especially when there is flooding and especially when there are problems with the level crossing on Henwick Road, when the whole area is then scattered with clearway cones. So the pressure is going to be intense, and I can't understand how even just one vehicle extra on the highway could be tolerated in this geographical location.
Richard, Karen, I don't know if you can take that, please.
Yeah, thank you. As some of you will be aware, I appreciate that some members are new to the committee, don't know who I am. I am from Worcestershire County Council, so I'm from the Highway, Karen Hanchett, I'm from the Highway Authority. So as some of you will be aware, our adopted streetscape design guide does allow for parking-free development in locations that we consider to be sustainable. Now, although this isn't located in the heart of the city centre, in our opinion, this location is a sustainable location, and in line with our adopted streetscape design guide, the applicant has provided information on the accessibility of the site by sustainable modes within their design and access statement. There are double yellow line parking restrictions on Hilton Road to prevent displaced parking immediately outside the site, and that's what our streetscape design guide allows for. Where there are parking restrictions in place, then in certain locations we will accept parking free. in terms of, I know there has been some concern raised in terms of deliveries and when people move in and move out. Obviously, unloading and loading can take place on the double yellow lines, and those will be, as you've already heard from the officer, over a very short space of time. So, you know, they won't cause, you know, in our opinion, a severe impact on the highway. And that's what we always have to refer back to, is obviously the NPPF. And I'm saying, we're not saying this is car-free development, we're calling it parking-free development, and it does comply with our streetscape design guide.
Yes, go
How,
ahead.
how far would you say it would be reasonable for a person living at these premises to be able to walk away from a car to gain access to it? I'm thinking of areas like Westbourne Close, Henwick Avenue, Arrowsmith Avenue, areas where I represent, which are already suffering from commuter parking problems, where people park there and go into the city centre. I'm sure this would be a problem here as well, would it not? And that would have a compound impact upon parking and highway issues in that geographical vicinity.
As I've said at previous committees, what we are seeing now is that there is a change starting to happen where people are choosing to live in city centres and not own a car. The cost of owning a car, insuring a car, running a car is significant. And, you know, people are choosing to purchase a property in sustainable locations where they have access to train stations for onward travel to employment. You can walk to supermarkets to do your shopping, you can walk to day-to-day services. So we would, you know, hope that people that choose to live here will not be owning a car. If they want a car, we would hope that they would be choosing to live and park somewhere else where they have appropriate parking. But here, I say, this is to cater for that change that we genuinely are seeing, where people are choosing not to own a vehicle. Obviously, with car clubs that are coming on stream as well. So for when they do need to have a car, when they want to go on holiday or they need to go on a journey that they can't undertake by active mode or by train, then there should be availability of car clubs coming on stream.
And if I understand from what you're saying correctly, then we have no ability to enforce or condition or compel any of the potential residents in these premises not to have a car.
I will probably leave that to your planning officers, but it's my understanding that that is not something that could be reasonably conditioned and enforced.
No, just to confirm for the record, and through you, Chair, is that would be correct. That would not be a reasonable condition.
Dale?
Thank you, Chair. Just an important material consideration in the determination of this application, following on from the Highways Officer's comments, is the fact that a 6-unit scheme was approved, which on page 11, paragraph 5.3 of the agenda, where that's set in context to the 7-unit scheme before us today. And that had no car parking either.
Okay, that's a really good point, thank you. And that is a material consideration. Okay, so have we got any other questions from any members at all? No. The officer's recommendation is to grant permission for this. I'm sensing that there may be support for it. I'm not sure. Is anybody?
Helps, Chair. I will move a recommendation. I'll move a proposal that it's refused on the grounds that it be an unacceptable impact on highway safety. I've heard nothing to convince me otherwise.
Okay. Is that a material ground?
Through you, Chair. So in terms of, I wasn't quite quick enough for your speaking.
I apologise.
So
unacceptable impact on highway can't even say it. 738, paragraph 738.
So essentially, having taken into account the previous approval, and you're saying that the, if I can just word it right, just for clarity, the additional traffic impact, or the additional transport demands with no car parking on site would create an unacceptable highway impact on an already surrounding network which is struggling in terms of highway safety.
And can I just clarify, Richard, that's because the 2018 permission was for 6 residents and this is for 7. So it's based on there being one more apartment.
Absolutely, Chair. I don't think the local conditions could tolerate any additional potential on-street parking problems in that area. It's already acute as we speak, and I don't believe it can accommodate any more.
I need a seconder, please, for that proposal. Is anyone willing to second it? No? Okay, in that case, do I have a proposal to grant permission, please? Thank you, Alina. And, oh, yes, yeah.
Sorry, may I pick up on the point about conditioning for solar panels to be included?
Yes, of course. Yes. Yes.
So with that proviso,
Yes.
Just to confirm, condition 16 will be for requirement of the solar panels to be provided. And whilst I'm speaking, if I can also just note that condition 13 will have the same reason as condition 14. The reason has been missed off. But with all that, that's as I understand it.
Okay, so Alina, you're happy to propose with those conditions?
I'm happy to propose this.
With those amendments?
Yep.
You're happy to second? Thank you, Pat. Can we put it to a vote then? Would you like to do it, Georgia?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, to confirm that the recommendation is for approval, subject to the conditions set out in the report, the renumbered condition 15, the reason for condition 13, the additional condition 16. All those in favour of granting permission, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those against? 2. And just to clarify, Chair, although Councillor Shavaz-Ditter has joined the meeting, because he joined partway through, he hasn't taken part and hasn't voted, which is why there's 8 votes today.
Okay, so thank you, Georgina. That means it is carried.
That's right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so thank you. If you're free to go if you'd like to now. Thank you. If we move on then to item 9 on the agenda. This is the application for Pitmaston House in Malvern Road. This is for a listed building consent for the retention of the works that have been carried out. Paul is going to do a presentation for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just power up the presentation. I'll remember to turn on the clicker. Okay. So, members, Pitmaston House is a Grade 2 listed building situated on the Malvern Road to the southwest of the city centre. In October last year, the Planning Committee considered a full application for a hotel use, resolving to approve that application with a number of restrictive conditions. The approval was issued in December last year. Just a few photos to remind those who were previously on the committee and for those who haven't been on the committee before. This is Pitmaston House, and that's the frontage of the property. Got a handsome listed building, and to the rear of the property. The application for consideration today relates to a listed building consent to regularise the internal works of the listed building that are being carried out as part of the conversion to the hotel use. The application has been called into committee by one of the ward members. The works relate to a provision of a number of new studded walls or partitions to create and reconfigure en-suites to the 7 bedrooms and reconfigure the ground floor area. We're going to go through the comparison between the existing and the proposed, and as we do so, you'll notice that the red elements are those things to be removed, and the blue elements, yes, you guessed it, are those things to be provided. So, that is the existing ground floor, and that is the proposed, and you can see where partitions have been removed, and the blue show partitions that are included. So that's ground floor, and just a picture of the ground floor. That's the main dining room area, and this just shows the quality of the workmanship that's been taking place. And this is the lounge area for the hotel. So we're moving up to the first floor, and we have the existing and we have proposed, and I'll just do that again so that we can spot the difference. And you'll notice that there has been a petition removed by the stairwell and en-suites created for the bedrooms. And again, just a picture of one of the bedrooms, just so that you get a comparison of those works that have taken place. And that's one of the en-suites that has been created. And then one of the other bedrooms on the first floor. In terms of the second floor, we have, again, red removed, blue provided, and again, just as a comparison, you can see again the ensuite provision. Those are the stairs that have been minorly adjusted with removal of some petitions and a previous dummy lift, and then a bedroom on the second floor. The works that have taken place are of high quality and reflect the heritage status of the building. And whilst they are retrospective, they have not removed any important features or obscured any important historic fabric. The internal works have provided an internal layout that allows the building to have an optimum viable use to allow it to be maintained for future generations. The Conservation Officer has raised no objections, highlighting that the works have a neutral to positive impact on the listed building. Consideration of the listed building consent relates wholly to the impact on its fabric and its integrity as a building. The works are wholly appropriate to the listed structure and have been carried out to a high standard. There are no matters that require additional works or conditions in this case. A note is recommended on the permission to be able to confirm that drawings to which the consent relates. On this basis, the application for listed building consent is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Do we have any questions, please, from members? Pat.
It occurs to me that I can't quite remember the details of any management plan on the previous application. And one of the problems we had prior to this was that we were getting a lot of raucous parties involved. Now, a hotel can have a lot of hen parties. I've experienced those before and not had any sleep at all. So I'm hoping that it isn't impossible to impose some kind of management condition. Other than that, I would be totally happy with this.
Through you, Chair, and thank you for the question. In terms of the full application, you are correct that there was imposed quite a number of conditions in terms of the restriction of the management, but also in terms of how the hotel operated in terms of hours. So that was appropriate for the full application. It wouldn't be appropriate to re-impose those conditions on the listed building consent, because what we're considering is the works of the fabric rather than its use. So to give you assurance, yes, they have been imposed and they are at the moment being submitted for approval. So we are considering those at the moment.
For the clarification, I think that's very good news.
Great, thank you. Andrew.
A question about fabric, and for us members to all gain potentially further training about the there's been a renaissance or a rediscovery of traditional materials and how appropriate traditional materials are for redevelopment. Obviously not seeking to impose these in retrospect, but going forward, this is a topic of particular personal interest, and I think it could be a great journey of discovery for us all, that whenever we're talking about refurbishment of listed properties, I appreciate there's a lot of work already ongoing, and this is already a known topic, but it would be great for us as well to gain from that.
Absolutely.
Through you, Chair, and I think that certainly can be added to the briefings that members will get over the next 12 months. But in terms of this application, when we're looking at internal petitions, quite often being able to be removed and being simple stud petitions are really important for listed buildings. Where there are more solid structural elements, that's where we start to look at historic building fabric and how those methods need to be done. But for the walls that have been created here, they are stud petitions, and what that allows us to do is to make them removable, so there is that interchangeable elements to whatever use will come to the listed building.
Just another thing to note to new members is that we do site visits where we go back and look at finished buildings that we gave planning permission to. So it might be interesting to go back to one that has been conservation minded one perhaps. Okay, thank you. Do I have any other questions or comments at all? No, okay. Shall we have a proposal? Thank you, Pat. Can I have a seconder, please? Oh, thank you, Mel. Okay, so in that case, for this application, can I have votes in favour, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay, thank you. So that application is passed. Yeah, I just want to check, does anybody want a comfort break? Because it is very hot in this room, or are we okay to carry on? 2 minutes, okay, thank you. item number 10. It's the application for 57A Stainburn Close. We've got the ward member, Councillor Richard Udall, speaking. Would you like, you will come after the officer report and then leave the room. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. We're up and running. So, members, this application relates to 57A Stainburn Close, which is located to the west of the city centre within St John's Ward. It's accessed from the Bromyard Road via Tudor Way. The property is a newly built property which has been attached to number 57 following the demolition of a previous garage and an extension to number 57. The proposal seeks to convert the existing 4-bed dwelling into a 4-bedroomed house in multiple occupation, a HMO. The application has been called in by one of the ward members. Just some photographs of the site. So this is number 57 and 57A. 57A is to the left-hand side. You can see that as constructed, it has a dormer window in the roof, which utilises the roof space for the 4th bedroom. This is another angle of the front of the property. And again, this is the property next door, which is number 55, which is also a HMO, and that'll be referred to later on in the presentation. This is looking back towards the junction of the road and showing the existing drop curbs. This is looking down Stainburn Close, and you can see the yellow lines up to the junction and then looking further down. And then this is looking from where Stainburn Close is severed and looking back towards the property, which is towards the bottom of the photo in the distance. And again, another photo that way. There are no physical works proposed as part of this planning application, seeking just for the use of the property. Policy SWD 14 and the SPD on HMOs, adopted in 2016, provide a policy framework for considering new HMO applications. And this is set out in detail in paragraph 7.2 of the officer's report. As well as detailed considerations, the policy seeks to prevent an over-concentration of HMOs within areas across the city, limiting up to 10% concentration within 100 metres. Members' attention is drawn to the late papers, which include a corrected map showing the existing HMOs within the area. Whilst there are 2 existing HMOs on Stainburn Close, one of which is adjacent to 57A, when including the proposed HMO, the total percentage would just be under 5% in concentration and would not result in more than 2 HMOs being next to each other. On this basis, the proposal wholly is in conformity with the policy requirements. 2 car parking spaces are provided within the frontage of the property and cycle parking to the rear. It is noted that the parking requirements for the existing property and the proposed use are identical. And whilst there is a shortfall of 1 space, this is the case for the current position. And there are no additional parking pressures as a result of the proposal. And you can see on the slide, members, that the existing properties, 57 is a 3-bed property with 1 parking space, and 57A at the moment is a 4-bed property with 2 car parking spaces. The total requirement of the design guide is 5, and proposed there is no change. It is still 1 car parking space for 57 and 2 for 57A, and the total requirement is still 5. There is no additional car parking pressure. And I've lost my notes. In terms of where the property sits, members will note that the property is in close proximity to bus stops, and hopefully I've done a half-decent job in putting red flags on the bus stops, and you can see the red rectangle of the application site. So there are 3 bus stops within the vicinity of the property, and they are on a high frequency bus corridor with the number 30 passing every 10 minutes. The property is within 1 mile of St John's Centre and 2 miles from the city centre. The Highway Authority have raised no objections to the proposal, and the location is considered to be a sustainable location, which balances out the minor shortfall from the standards, along with the additional consideration for members as a material consideration of the existing situation, which is exactly the same in terms of parking provision. Overall, it is considered that adequate off-street parking is provided as part of the proposal. 60 square metres of amenity space is provided within the property, with cycle and bin storage provided to the rear. The use of the property is not considered to result in any harm to the adjacent properties through noise and disturbance. Only one objection has been raised from a resident, and this does not raise any concerns in respect of amenity. Internally, the room sizes exceed the minimum housing standards for HMOs, and members are advised that the final consideration is through the HMO licensing process, which is controlled by the housing legislation. Concerns have been raised by Councillor Udall, and they have been set out within the report, and they are also addressed within the report from paragraph 7.3 onwards. Having considered the application in its totality, the proposed change of use to a 4-bed HMO is considered acceptable, wholly meeting the policy requirements and creating no harm in respect of the matters of detail. The proposal is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions as set out within the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Can I ask members if they've got any questions, please? Oh, yeah, we're going to speak. Sorry, I'm sorry. I almost missed you out.
No,
Richard, would you like to...
I'm easy to miss.
I know. Would you like to move to the public speaker's seat? I think that'd be...
Right, okay.
And then we can see you properly. And then you've got 5 minutes, have you? Or is it 15? Or it's not time to see the ward member? Yes. You can speak for as long as you like, but please don't. Please don't. It's fair. Yes.
Chair, I think it's worth. Oh, right. Well, it says public speaker. Does it? Oh, there we go. Whatever. Anyway, can you hear me? No. It says public speaker. It doesn't matter. Does it?
Just type it in again. No.
I hope this has not been shaved off my time. No, it doesn't. That's fine. Okay, thank you, Chair. I would point out that I called this in and raised my objection prior to being a member of the Planning Committee. I may not have done so in this circumstance if I knew I was going to be sitting here as a Planning Committee member. However, obviously, events change. I have significant concerns about this application, mostly highway concerns. Stainburn Close is a very narrow road. It is, despite what the picture showed, very frequently congested by parked cars. This is because of its location right next to Honeywell School, formerly Dines Green School, which is directly opposite this application site. Parents and children use Stainburn Close as the main footpath to and from the school for both cycling and walking. And it's worth pointing out that the school has got the highest percentage of children who attend by foot or by cycle of any school in the county. So it's already pushing the majority of its children going to school by foot or by cycle. However, some parents do continue to use their vehicles to get their children to school, and consequently Stainburn Close is where they often park, causing considerable congestion. The 4 residents of this property, I suspect, will all have cars, and therefore there will be an overflow onto the highway, which I do not believe to be sustainable. The issue about bus stops is fascinating, because one of the red spots which were used doesn't have any buses actually stopping at it, which is an interesting fact that it's a bus stop. The other bus, which is the number 30 bus stops, all their services finish at 7 o'clock at night in the weekday and at 6 o'clock at night at weekends, which means the occupants of this house will have no access to public transport in the evening or most of the weekend, consequently leaving them trapped in this location without having public transport provision. There are no adequate, sensible, safe cycle routes from this location to the rest of St John's or to the university, making sure that this area is potentially a death trap for anybody wanting to use other forms of transport, especially at night. So I would argue that the consequences of this application will mean an overflow onto parking onto the Stainburn Close Road, which is frequently congested at night because of evening events which take place at the school, and it's used as a church on a Sunday as well. Therefore, it will continually be blocked, which will cause some stress and tension. So without their own transport provision, the residents will most likely be students, will not have capacity for transport provision unless they have cars. There is insufficient car parking space on the site, which will cause an overspill onto the highway. Reference has been made in the application pack to previous applications and their appeals. I would say, as I'm sure I shouldn't need to say, that each application should be treated on its merits and that there's no precedent in planning law. So consequently, I would ask you to test this case to protect the residents of Stainburn Close, to ensure that they don't have the misery of on-street parking problems brought even more to their area as a result of this application, which I believe would be a significant cause of highway concern. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Do we have any questions for Richard, please? Thank you, Alina.
Thank you, Chair. Richard, you answered the one question I was most concerned about, was the buses, because we all know in Worcester they're pretty hopeless and they all end at 6 or 7 o'clock at night. So you've clarified that point for me about your greater knowledge of that area. But can you tell me, we were told that it's 2 miles into the city centre. How long would you say it would take to walk from that location?
I've never done it, but it'd be the full length of Bromyard Road, effectively, and then through the city, through Cripplegate Park in St John's into the city. So my best guess, depending on your speed and walking, with me, it'll probably take an hour, but for others, probably less so. But it is a substantial distance. It is really on the city boundary.
Are there any other questions for Richard? No? Okay, Richard, if you could just leave the room, please, and we'll move to debate. Pat.
Thank you. It was rather sad, really, because parking issues under the NPPF section, well, paragraph 101, are not an adequate reason for refusing an application. We could not win an appeal at all under national policy. There is no way. So if you want to refuse this for any reason, you'd have to find some other grounds. This application does comply with the Article 4 direction. It's only 4.68% of HMOs within the radius, the 100-metre radius that is the boundary for, or the threshold that we use for Article 4 directions. So in fact, there is no reason to refuse an HMO in this place, particularly as that you can have 2 in a row, but you can't have 3, and that's not the case here. There's only the 1. So that rules that out. As far as the statutory consultees go, the police, I think so far as planning can address their concerns, some of their concerns are really more to do with building regulation, but so far as we can answer their concerns, we have, mainly in condition 9. So about security, smoke, fire, boundary treatments, external lighting, that sort of thing, are answered by condition. And highways, well, yes, there is already a parking shortfall, as I've already said. We cannot refuse this solely on parking grounds. So I think we really should approve this.
Thank you, Pat. Karen, I don't know whether you could come in on highways, please.
I mean, I will. I mean, I'm not sure that there's much more I can add to the excellent presentation that Mr. Round has already given. I will say this is a difficult one, and it is one that we debated as a team. But as we've explained, there's a shortfall in parking now. There will still be the same shortfall in parking when this is converted to a HMO. So in terms of being able to defend a refusal on that basis at appeal, we really didn't think that that would be possible, hence our no objection.
Thank you, that's really helped. I've got Jill, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I think I've read somewhere that the room sizes are acceptable. Again, that's single occupancy only. I just want to ram that point home. I guess, or are these double occupancy bedrooms for? So it could be 8 people living there. Is that?
Through you, Chair. The HMO standards are slightly different in terms of that we would normally look in terms of the nationally described space standards, but they are all above, and I've lost the piece of paper that I had got with the space standards in. Here we go. So in terms of a bedroom with separate communal living space, if I just get the drawing up. So for a two occupants sharing would be 11 square meters. So bedroom 1 is 12.36.
Okay.
Bedroom 2 is 11.73. Bedroom 3 is 14.77, and bedroom 4 is 12.2.
Okay, thank you. I might come back with another one if I can.
I wonder whether we could also clarify, because this is going to be an HMO under the licensing, and that obviously puts more controls on the standard for the house as well, doesn't it?
Through you, Chair, I couldn't comment on the HMO process. I'm not aware of that.
Andrew?
Yes, my understanding is that for an HMO with, in another authority, I looked into this, HMO with, what constitutes an HMO and what number of people. So there's a difference in if it's 3 unrelated people or if it's 5 unrelated people. If it's 5, you've got to have fire doors, etc. And this was related to a listed property that I was looking at, which answered the question as to what the maximum occupancy should be. So yeah, so there are additional things that switch in if there are more people living in the HMO.
Okay, I've got Alina, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really concerned about this application, and I know that we're really limited and we've got effectively no powers almost to refuse this. But if you take into account what Councillor Udall said about how long it takes to walk into the city centre, and the fact that the buses stop at 6 and 7 o'clock at night, this isn't sustainable at all. And I do wonder, if you look at the application, it talks about bike storage, but what type of, bike storage? On a previous application that we've just looked at, it talks about covered, secure and accessible storage. Yeah. If you look at the application site, they won't be able to have accessible trikes. So how can it be accessible storage for cycles? And the other concern is about the refuse collection. Worcester City Council talks from their refuse collectors that there'd have to be a larger bin. Well, who's going to be responsible for dragging this round from the back to the front? And what about noise, the nuisance for neighbours? So I know we've got no powers, but I'm just really concerned about approving this application.
Okay, Paul?
Through you, Chair, and they're very good points to raise. In respect of the cycle shelters, if I can draw your attention to condition 5, which requires cycle provision to be in accordance until the cycle parking is provided with details, that would need to be in accordance with the Streetscape Design Guide, which requires them to be covered and secure. So again, we've got that provision that will go to the Highway Authority to ensure that is provided in terms of cycle storage. In respect of the distance to town, yes, St John's is a mile away. On an average walking, that is about 20 minutes distance. The city centre is 2 miles away, 40 minutes. And then in respect of your final point in terms of bins, if members felt that they wish to have control over that in terms of their provision and how they are managed, there was an application in Barbourne where a refuse management plan was condition was imposed, and that would be something, if members felt that they wished to go down that route, they could consider that as an additional condition.
Jill?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think I sent a question about that condition because I don't think it's been enforced. So I'm not sure if anybody's been around and enforced it recently, but I don't believe so.
In terms of the Barbourne, the application I was referring to was the one that hasn't, I don't think it's been constructed.
There was one before that, number 40. Anyway, I don't want to distract the committee with that. Personally, given the restrictions on our control of these planning matters, I struggle to find a difference in approval terms for having this as a 3-bedroom house and a 4-bedroom HMO, really, because in a 3-bedroom house, you could have almost many people living. Right, their bin's a bit bigger. Yes, there can be a plan, which would then have to be enforced, and I know they exist, and you know that can happen, for how that's managed. So I think we haven't got a great deal of choice. Not happy particularly, but
Yeah, I would support having a refuse management plan for the HMO. I think that's, people are feeling quite positive about that as an addition. Okay, Andrew?
Chair, thank you. Officers and members, I'm trying to understand how easy it would be to get, the cycle storage is at the back of the property, and I'm just concerned about how easy and practical, or how much of a deterrence there is, how much of a barrier there is for people to actually get even just conventional cycles, let alone tricycles or disabled access cycles, to the back of the property.
I'm just wondering, is that something that's picked up in the streetscape design at all, or?
Well, I'm just wondering where the entrance, where the rear gate is, etc., for access to the rear of the property and the garden. Please.
Through you, Chair, if I can direct you to page 52 of the report, there's a layout plan, and you'll see that there is an access path down to the left-hand side of the property. There is a gate that then goes into where the bike and the bin stores are. The path then continues around to the garden of 57. So the pathway is, we believe, and consider to be sufficiently wide enough to be able to get bins, the normal bins that would be required for this property, out, but also cycles as well to be out along that pathway.
So the gate is that. Sorry, I was struggling to see. I was looking at. Sorry, I was looking at that layout. So the door is actually right at the rear corner of the building.
That's correct.
And does that swing enable space for a cycle to get through? Hopefully it does. Hard to see from the width. I mean, I haven't got dimensions on there, so I can't really work it out.
Well, the red line is inside the path. The path's outside the red line.
I think to help, and that's a very good point in terms of the shared path is outside the red line. I think what if members so wish to expand the condition in terms of cycle parking to include access provision as well, I think that would be able to clarify that point, but Karen might have a better idea than that.
Sorry, yeah, I was trying to, when you raised the issue of this, yeah, our streetscape design guide does require that cycle parking is covered, secure and accessible, because obviously it can be a deterrent to anybody if they've got to, you know, if it's going to take them 15 minutes to get their bike out, it's a deterrent. So we will wait and see what the applicant provides in terms of information to discharge that condition, and if it's not, in our opinion, doesn't meet those tests, then obviously we won't discharge that condition, if that helps.
Okay. Elena, are you happy with that? You're not?
I'm honestly not happy, but I have to, you know, I've got my own opinion, but I'm just not happy at all about it. But I realise that we've got constraints, so I'm just not happy at all. Sorry.
I had Shafaz as well. You sure? You're happy? Do I have any other questions or anything?
Could I just say that bin management condition should go in, that's all.
Yes, I
Please.
absolutely agree. So we're going to have the bin management condition put in, something about the cycling access for the path.
To clarify then, so there would be condition 10 is proposed in terms of a refuge management plan. And members, I don't think that we have a proposal yet, but
No,
this
we
is
don't.
potential that we could look at. And then condition 5 would be amended to say the development hereby permitted should not be occupied until the cycle parking and access shown on the submitted block plan have been provided in accordance with the details to be submitted and approved in writing by the local planning authority.
Okay, so do we have any opinions on whether, with those conditions, this is an acceptable proposal or it still isn't?
Yeah, I note the police conditions for secure access, and that presumably will cover both the bin store and the cycle. So given that you've got really big bins, how are they going to be got out on bin day? Because they'll be inside the secure area, won't they?
Through you, Chair, that would be something I would suggest that would be dealt with as part of the refuge management plan. We would need
okay,
them to
yeah.
be able to demonstrate of the size of bins that they require, because there will be different sizes that they can obtain to be able to make sure that they're in a secure location. So that will be part of the refuge management plan, to make sure that they're not on the street, that they are able to be accessed from the rear and be able to pull forward on the necessary days.
Because it's a question of who gets them out there, because those big ones are quite difficult to handle. So
Yeah.
I'm presuming that the refuse people would handle them and not the residents.
Or would it be that they just have small bins?
I don't know, but one way or the other, it needs resolving.
And that's why we suggest that I think
Thank
the
you,
refuge management plan is a good idea.
Anybody wish to propose anything? Okay, Pat? I propose in support. Okay, so we have a seconder for that at all, please. Shafaz? Yeah, we're just going to clarify with the
And can I just
additions.
confirm, Councillor Agar, that proposal is with the additional condition 10 for the restaurant management plan and the amendment to condition 5?
Yes.
Thank you.
And Shafaz, you're happy with that too? Okay, so can we move to a vote on that, or do people still want to discuss it further? No, we'll move to a vote. Okay, great. So can we have votes in favour then, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Against?
1.
And that's it. Okay, so that's therefore carried.
That's right.
Thank you. Right. Yeah, so we're just going to wait for Councillor Udall to come back in the room. Yes, and Councillor Alcott has gone, yes. So we're now back to 8 councillors in the room, okay. Yeah, is that all right, Margaret? Is everyone feeling a bit hot? It's a bit stuffy, isn't it? I think we're going to need some fans, aren't we, or something?
I wonder if we could open that side, that door there, would that
Yeah, does
create
that door
any
open as well?
current?
Yeah.
It might, hadn't it?
Yeah. Has everyone got enough water? I know, I agree. Yeah. Speak to our county councillors. You're absolutely right. It's a problem, isn't it, for all the applications actually, but particularly some. If we move to item 11 then, which is 56 Foregate Street, and Paul, you're presenting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this application relates to 56 Foregate Street within the city centre. The building is an infill structure constructed in the mid-1960s between 57 Foregate Street and the railway bridge, both of which are Grade 2 listed buildings. The site is within the historic city conservation area. The building itself has no historic status or merit. So in terms of some pictures, there's, I didn't take this myself, I didn't get that high. But we've got a picture, which an aerial photo of the building, and it's the building to the left-hand side of the railway bridge. And you can see the railway running from Foregate Street Station towards Riverside. And that's looking back the other way towards the property and to Foregate Street Station. That is number 56, which is the property in question. And looking back towards the railway bridge. That's the tiled area underneath the railway bridge. And this is the rear of the property. And a bit further back, you can see the rear of the property and 57, which is on the right-hand side, and Court Mews is behind us. And again, that's a picture of 57. So the planning application is submitted by the City Council under Regulation 3 of the General Regulations of 1992, and it seeks for the demolition of 56 and the creation of public realm improvements. The works are part of the wider Arches project and will enable pedestrian link from Foregate Street to Croft Road, providing direct access between the city centre and Riverside. And that's just a picture that we all know, but just to show that link and where the property is in terms of along the Arches and linking into the Riverside Park. The removal of the three-storey building will have a positive impact on the conservation area, preserving and enhancing its character and appearance. The additional public realm works that connect with those that are already completed and that are in the process of being completed will provide an attractive, safe route for all visitors of the city, increasing the suitability of sustainable routes into the heart of the centre. And that just shows the position of the paved area and the crossing that is proposed as part of the wider streets public realm improvement works that will link between the two sides of Foregate Street Station and Foregate Street. Sorry, before I go on. A planter, bollards and cycle stands are provided within the newly created area. Details of the planter and landscaping are recommended to be submitted as part of a suitably worded condition. The provision of cycle stands is very much welcomed, but the application does not create any demand for cycle stands. And as such, a condition to secure them is not recommended, as officers feel that it would not meet the 6 tests. However, the City Council have included these within the proposed scheme, and there is nothing to suggest that they will not be provided by the City Council. Matters of building recording as part of archaeology requirements can be met through conditions, as well as any works to the tiled wall beneath the bridge and the provision of a heritage board to enhance the heritage provision within the site. Overall, this proposal is an exciting prospect as part of the wider public realm regeneration works across the city, which will improve the appearance of the city and increase sustainable pedestrian and cycle flows. The application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out within the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Just looking at the drawing, you know the red hatched area, what is that, please?
In terms of the response to the question, that is tactile paving, which will direct people as they come out in terms of bringing them to the crossing point, which will be provided on Foregate Street.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions, please? Jill.
Yes, Chair. You mentioned the heritage sign that's going to go on the wall. I did actually have a little conversation with David Blake and Ped about this. So he mentioned that there was going to be all sorts of information about the city, which sounds very nice. But I did want to have included in that, and I don't know if this can be part of this, turn right. turn right, you know, don't just keep going, that's your new route, don't go left like you would do, but think about turning right into the beautiful Georgian end of town.
Through you, Chair, and I think it's a really good thing, but I think that's probably going to be picked up as part of the corporate response to wayfinding across the city. In terms of this application, what we're looking for is a response in terms of the demolition and the heritage aspects, and whilst it might not feel like a heritage building, but actually some heritage response we feel is appropriate in terms of this location. But in terms of the wider wayfinding, I understand that there is a corporate response that's looking at how wayfinding across the whole city is provided, and I think that is probably best to sat with that rather than with this application.
And I suppose the thing about this is that it is opening up a historic movement pattern, and it is very supported by the Civic Society. They say, you know, we're going to see two heritage assets the way we would have seen them before this was built, which is wonderful, isn't it? Pat?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, it's superb from that point of view. I absolutely agree. And let's get rid of this ghastly 1964 building, is it? That really doesn't fit with the Georgian street scene at all. And yeah, definitely. The other thing is perhaps, I mean, I know, but for the benefit of the committee and the public, could you actually tell us a bit more about that planter which is stuck in the middle and might be thought by some not to be appropriate to be there? So why have we got it?
Through you, Sharon, it's a really good question. In terms of providing landscape actually provides a really important greening and visual appearance, but also it does prevent unauthorised access, not just relying on bollards for vehicles and such like, and also it provides that additional crime prevention in terms of vehicles accessing public and pedestrian areas. So it's really important not only from the greening but also from a safety point of view, and those details will be provided. And I think for members it's important that the City Council provide details in terms of its long-term maintenance, so that we don't just get a planter that's not there. And obviously the City Council will endeavour to do that, but for this committee to make that point that actually the maintenance of the landscaping and that provision is really important.
So may I just sort of get you to expand on that a little bit? What you're saying with safety is you don't want anybody to drive cars down that alleyway for whatever reason.
Exactly that point. Thank you.
Yep, that's a great point. The other thing I was going to, Paul, I don't know if you could talk about, is the issue we've got with Network Rail, the fact that it's going to be the working hours for doing this demolition and how that's going to be managed because of where it is in the city.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In respect of details of how the construction management plan is going to be done, Condition 4 sets that out in detail. As part of that, officers will consider and consult with Network Rail. Part of that may need to be relaxed to allow works to take place in terms of the demolition, because as we understand it, Network Rail's position as it stands at the moment would be that trains would not be able to take place whilst demolition occurs. However, that needs to be discussed with Network Rail in detail, and therefore the construction environment management plan will be important to be able to make sure that the hours of operation of demolition occur in the right way to be able to not prevent trains operating when they need to operate.
Yep. Do I have any other questions, please? Oh, Andrew.
Thank you. Chair. So I guess that discussion with Network Rail about what impact upon trains and therefore what constraints about timing also depend on what method of demolition is used. So it's obviously a detail to be worked out that we won't know the answer to until it'd be the sort of thing that be sorted out on site, presumably.
Through you, Chair, exactly that point. That will be something that will need to be discussed, and we don't know at this stage whether the City Council will have to accept 24-hour working to ensure that the rapid nature of the demolition takes place. But that's something that we need to make sure that we balance not only residents' amenity issues, but also accessibility into the city centre. So balancing those two elements is going to be really important, and it's a consideration that officers need to look at along with colleagues who are proposing this project and along with Network Rail.
Do we have any further comments or questions? Has anybody got any concerns that they want to express? No? So are we happy to move to vote? Jill, if you propose, do I have a seconder? Andrew, lovely. So we haven't changed any conditions, have we? So we're going to vote for, where are we? Because this is a city council one, so do we have a different recommendation? For regulation 3?
No, it's just
No, just straightforward approval. Okay, great. Okay, so if we have some votes for the application, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Reg is going to present it for us, and I personally really welcome this. I think it's really good for new members to see the background to what's been going on at the committee, and all of us to take measure of what the officers have been working on. Thank you, Duncan.
Chair, if I may, I'm going to start by introducing the item and then hand over to Duncan when we get to the science part, get to all the numbers, because I really want to have the opportunity to celebrate the success of the Planning Committee and the new management team that we have in place in the Officer Corps. Really, it felt that we should have been bringing an annual report through anyway, because we're such an important regulatory committee, and this committee meets more than any other. The committee met 11 times last year. It's tremendous investment of everyone's time and a commitment in very significant decisions for the city. And as members of the committee will know, the planning service has been on quite a programme of improvement over the last 2 years. So again, it just feels really good to be able to bring the first annual report of the Planning Committee at a point where we've really made some good progress. And notwithstanding some of the opening remarks that might have been made at tonight's meeting, this planning service is not on the cusp of special measures, quite the opposite. This planning service is absolutely committed to excellence, and there is a high degree of professional pride in the work undertaken by the officers and the members. I appreciate that you need to be satisfied of that in terms of data and numbers and evidence, as well as my warm words. But Chair, I really do commend this report to you as a piece of evidence to demonstrate that actually we are performing very well. So if I could just pull out a few key points for you, and as I say, I would like Duncan just to take you through the statistics to close, because, again, a point's been made about performance. I think it's important that we look at that on the record. In terms of the overall process, I think it's really worth reflecting, and we did reflect on this in our training recently, that the National Planning Service, supported by the LGA, says planning committees a significant investment of time and resources for most councils, close coordination of planning, democratic services, legal teams, an important shop window for the council, and a crucial role in providing democratic and transparent decisions on sometimes controversial issues. And a phrase that our head of service uses quite often is teamwork. And I think that teamwork is really key in planning, and that's teamwork in terms of members and officers. And I can look at colleagues around the table and I can think of examples where improvements were suggested to me, feedback was given, we looked at it and we said, you're absolutely right, I'm so glad you raised that because we didn't know, and we've tried to go about fixing things. And that's really part of that whole team approach, and we really, really value that. So the report obviously thanks members for their significant contributions in terms of time and frankly brain power over the last 12 months, and looks at the ground that we've covered. In relation to, as I say, I'm going to hand back to Duncan at the end just to look at what that's meant for you as a committee in terms of the 35 applications you've determined and the numbers that have been determined under delegated authority. But I want to just reflect on how you become an excellent service in a climate where you will always have very high workload, because I think that that's inevitable in a city council planning service. And yes, the council has financial challenges, but the council's absolutely committed to investing and delivering statutory services. And, you know, the planning service management team has been rebuilt on that basis, as some of you will be aware. So in terms of some customer service points, I've asked the Internal Audit Service to have a look at the customer experience, the customer journey, for want of a better phrase. And a member councillor who's not able to be here today has been an absolute champion for the wider customer core. So it's not always, the customers are not always applicants. Sometimes the customers are residents, and sometimes they're people who are different, you know, involved in the planning process in a different way, and they're all extremely important to us. So we've asked Audit to give us some actions for improvement. They've started by looking at the applications process, but there's more that we will do together. Findings will be reported to Audit and Governance Committee. In terms of feedback and complaints, I want to draw attention to the fact that there were no adverse findings of the Local Government Ombudsman in the last 12 months. That there were 10 complaints in relation to planning that were dealt with. Myself and the head of service have been handling complaints very closely. I'm sitting with people in the Guildhall, face to face, understanding complaints, really trying to get under the skin of things. Of those 10 complaints, 6 were not upheld, 3 were partially upheld, 1 was upheld. To the extent that there are themes, they relate to the legacy of delay and backlog, and there was a significant delay and backlog in our service. And the managers have made amazing strides to address that, and I'll just turn to that at the end. In relation to feedback, we had 9 unsolicited compliments. So we had people taking the chance to say, thank you, your help, your advice has been genuinely helpful. Almost surprised that, you know, that's really nice. And again, the culture in the management service is to share those complaints, share the customer positive feedback, and have a culture of learning and excellence. And I'm personally very satisfied that managers are investing in continual professional development for their professional workforce, because obviously that's absolutely key in terms of the quality of the advice that you get in your reports, and it's key in terms of things like confidence of the developer community and also staff retention. I do want to bring one complaint to your attention, and again, Duncan and myself had the benefit of spending some considerable time with the complainant to understand his complaint, and as I say in the report, we were very grateful that he took the time to go into the detail with us, because there is some learning from it for us, and some of it was played out at planning committee, so I think it's relevant for everybody. I don't know if everyone's had the opportunity to read it, but it relates to an application that was determined on the 24th of November 22 in relation to the St. Placides? I don't know what the... I'm not a Latin speaker, so I'll leave it there. So it relates to the way that that application went through committee and the information that was available to the committee to make their determination, the arrival of a late paper, the fact that the complainant who was an objector wasn't cited on the late paper, and the fact that he had a great deal of information, constructive information about the application, and was concerned to see that there wasn't as much of that played out as he would have liked. So having had a good look at it, understanding that these things can become, you know, legal matters, I was satisfied that we still had a sound decision and that the learning points wouldn't have affected the outcome. But for want of a better word, from a customer point of view, we absolutely agreed with him that it didn't feel like it had had a fair airing on certain issues, when in fact it had. And also it was partly the product of an application being updated whilst it was a live planning application, and information that had been provided by a statutory consultee at the outset, perhaps not being written up in quite as much detail as the application progressed to committee. So I hope that's sort of making sense to you. I thought I would share with you confidentially a full copy of my stage 2 response to him so you can see the detail. He did ask, he was appreciative that it would go in the public record like this, and I did obviously offer him the opportunity to come today, but he is busy. But he did ask that a formal statement would be made to explain how his complaint had been explored and how important green space considerations are at this site, which again, we have acknowledged, and that's consistent with planning policy for this site. I'm going to sort of wrap up there because there's plenty more to say. There's a section on appeals and legal challenges that Duncan may want to cover off. I want to make the point that the managers that are looking after the planning application process now are a whole new set, and you are reaping the benefits of that, frankly. And the culture that we're encouraging is an open and constructive one. So please do continue to flag points of feedback and learning points. But as I say, I do come to you today with a great deal of pride that we've made great strides, and it is credit to the teamwork of members and officers. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Duncan?
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a lot to add, and I'll try not to duplicate what Sian's already said. Just to be clear, the report that's before you this afternoon is recommending that the committee approves the report and submits it to Council for information, and that would be on the 11th of July. Having read the report, you will see that the Planning Committee has very successfully achieved its objectives, focusing on the determination of planning applications and considering other matters, such as the local application validation document. The role of the committee is set out at section 2 of the appendix report. And amongst other things, the committee has diligently determined planning applications in accordance with the development plan, unless material considerations have indicated otherwise. And given the number of competing issues that you are asked to take into account and weigh up and weigh one consideration against another, that is no mean feat. So you are doing that month in, month out. Section 4 of the report sets out a breakdown of the application types considered by this committee. And you will see that typically in planning speak, we refer to categories of applications: majors, minors, others, which is a bit of a catch-all. And we also talk about householder applications. And because of the volume of those, they are so important to the reputation of the service and the council overall. And you're probably already aware, at least some of you, that we measure our performance on householder applications in terms of those decisions that we make within 8 weeks. And it is sometimes extremely challenging to determine a householder application within 8 weeks. But we are trying to go a step further and to see whether there are some applications that we can determine within 6 weeks. And if you are an applicant or an agent and you receive a decision within 6 weeks, the feedback that we receive is that that is really positive, welcome, and it might just be a small domestic extension, but the difference, I know you don't need me to tell you this, but the difference that that makes to people's lives, that they can actually plan ahead, contact the builder and program in that work, it is massive for that individual or for that family. Moving on, the report also takes the opportunity to provide some information, some important information around planning performance in section 5, and details the significant service improvements that have been achieved in a relatively short period of time. And as Sian has already said, I think it's something that we should all be very, very proud of, but this is just the start. There is a lot more that we want to achieve. So these are not one-off improvements, but part of an ongoing continuous improvement approach to service delivery. Section 5 of the report on page 8 draws members' attention to feedback and complaints, and I won't go over the points that Sian has already mentioned, but I would like to draw your attention to appeals, and as part of this continual learning approach, section 6 refers to the appeal relating to Aldi on Tybridge Street, where the committee refused planning permission for a variation to a condition, applying planning judgment, and felt that what was proposed was unacceptable. Although the inspector decided the matter differently, it's important to see that the appellant didn't apply for costs, so there was nothing in front of the inspector as far as unreasonable behaviour. But even if they had, we would have made an argument that it was a judgment that this council was entitled to make. So we'll never expect to win every single appeal that is lodged, but from time to time, I think the learning on this one for all of us, officers and members, is that the availability of evidence upon which to make a decision is absolutely key. And what the inspector looked at in this case was the evidence of complaints and the evidence of harm caused by the proposed variation. Whether we agree or disagree, the inspector felt that the relaxation was acceptable. To conclude then, overall, we hope as members of this committee, you're also proud of what has been achieved so far. The positive and proactive approach to service delivery, focusing on customer service, and a sustained performance improvement programme, which this planning committee is such an important part of. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Duncan. Would anybody like to say anything? Jill?
Yes, could I please ask a sort of general question? What is the process by which officers decide to whom they write when a planning application has been submitted? I know, you write to various residents, and I've just got one that I've seen today where a surprising number of houses have been written to and an equally surprising number have not been written to. So I wasn't quite sure what I don't need to answer the whole thing now, but maybe you could answer me separately so I can understand the terms.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. At the moment, that process is carried out by our support staff, and they apply experience and judgment in terms of the type of application, the likely area that might be influenced by that proposal. And it's a difficult job that they undertake in terms of trying to do that in a consistent way. But for different types of application, and it does require some judgment. The question was asked recently, and we're actually in the process of pulling together a guidance document for those members of staff that will provide greater clarity in terms of what we expect. We'll publish that on our website, so we're open and transparent about that. And that should bring greater consistency than we currently have. I think the point I would make, though, is that even where authorities have that kind of guidance note, it still requires a degree of judgment. So in some cases, we might want to go further than the guidance note suggests in terms of who we notify of an application. It's a very difficult thing to get right all of the time. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, sure.
Is there a process by which I can ask you to write to more people?
Through you again, Chair. If as members you look at an application and you look to see who we have notified, and the emphasis is on notification as opposed to consultation, then we will always look at that and review the decision that we've made. I think we have to balance the public interest and consistency, also with the cost involved in sending out those notification letters. Some councils don't send out any notification letters at all. They rely on site notices posted outside of the application site, and clearly they've done reviews and decided that that's an appropriate approach to take. For the moment, we think in the city context, the sending out of letters is right for Worcester City, but we do need to constantly keep that under review. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew?
In terms of the notification element, is there a role for elected members with a concern in their ward to help with delivery of an approved, obviously not for party political side of things, campaigning, but an approved notification letter. So maybe members could be used to, if we have concerns, to deliver an official council letter.
Do you mean physically deliver it?
Yeah, if we're already walking around.
Through you again, Chair. We would generally resist that approach, and there are a number of reasons for that, but the key one is the auditability of that. The way that our system works is that we use something called iMail, which is very cost effective in terms of sending letters out. When a letter is sent out from our back office system, that is logged, and occasionally the Ombudsman will ask us to evidence what neighbour notification letters we've sent out, to be able to provide the Ombudsman with evidence from our back office system, rather than referring to somebody in time, but we can't evidence that in the same way. That's where that can become problematic. Thank you, Chair.
I just want to say that I presume that councillors who've joined planning committee are actually on it because they like planning and are interested in making good decisions about the future of our city. And because of that, we realise it's a massive topic to get your head around. So moving the meetings to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, having the site visits, but on the days where we don't have the site visits, to have some information sessions. I really hope we're going to have a good turnout, and also get your fellow councillors to come along, because I think even for councillors with their ward issues and problems, you know, coming to committee and speaking on behalf of residents, understanding policy and what we can do and what we can't do is really important. Pat?
Thank you, Jake. You're quite right, and it might be something you'd want to advertise at council, you know, when we do speak on this. But I'd like to, is it in order? I hope it's in order to have a vote of thanks to our officers, and that includes Ms Hanchett as well, who is not a city officer but contributes greatly for the efforts they've made through the year, and to the committee members as well, because I think everyone has really pulled together to try and improve the service. And it's been a massive effort, I know that, over 2 years, in fact, not just one.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that's a great point. Should we do that? Okay. Right. So everyone will see it. Great. Anything else, Jill?
Very, very quickly, when will we be notified when training sessions are happening, and exactly when? What time?
Chair, I would hope that we can make you aware of the first training session in the next couple of weeks at least.
Yeah, I just need to confirm actually that the committee we have in the voting approved the planning committee annual report for 2022 and 2023, and that we will be submitting it to council for information. Okay, so, thank you. Thank you. Okay, that's the meeting closed then. Thank you. Thank you.